Episode 47.
47.
47.
47.
47.
47.
Welcome to Seeking Focus, a podcast that provides photographers and videographers with a place to critically compare technology, share ideas, and enhance their skills.
Hello. How are you, Marty?
Mate, we did this every single time. How you going? This, that, yeah, good, bad, this, that. You know, Melbourne weather's pretty awesome at the moment, isn't it?
I wouldn't call this awesome. If I had Noah's Ark, it might be perfect.
I'm being sarcastic. It's we're hitting winter now, and today actually it's been raining for the last 4 days.
Yeah. The weather's actually been pretty decent leading up to now. And we've actually been very fortunate because we're almost at winter, and this is like the first touch of winter we've had. It's, you know, so yeah, no, we've been pretty good. It's been pretty good. Nice.
I actually managed to catch up on a lot of editing, which was fantastic, and just sort of kicking back and watching my videos, movies, and whatever else, and just editing at the same time, which is quite good, I think. What have you been up to, man?
I have spent the last week lying in bed looking at the ceiling.
Oh.
I was involved in a hit and run while I was cycling.
Ouch.
I was coming home from work, and I was going through a roundabout, which is like an intersection. And I had gone halfway through it, and I was just about to exit it, and the car came out from nowhere and hit me. I went over the bonnet, hit the window.
Oh, you actually went over the bonnet?
Went over the bonnet, hit the window, and dropped down onto the driver's side of the car, broke the mirror off. And yeah, he pulled up, he opened his window and screamed out, "You hit me, effing, and then just drove off.
Wow.
So it was a hit and run, and unfortunately, no one got the details down. One person did pull up while I was lying in the middle of the road trying to get myself back up again, because I was connected to the bicycle because I've got those clip-in pedals.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole bike came up with me.
Okay.
So it would have been quite visually great, but this person drives up, and she looks out the window and she goes, "Did he just hit you?" And I was quite dazed at the time. I was like, yeah, thinking, oh, great, someone's got the number plate or they're going to help. She goes, oh, I just drove off.
No.
And I'm sitting there thinking, you're kidding me. I've just been involved in a hit and run. You've seen it. You've offered no assistance.
Care factor 0, mate.
Care factor 0, yeah. And I was lying in the middle of the road. It was getting dark. It was raining at the time as well.
Wow.
So the funny thing was that so I picked up the bike and dragged my sorry ass with all the blood everywhere undercover. There was a couple of shops there, and I rang the police, because that's what you do. You ring the police and you make a report.
Yep.
And as I'm talking to the police, I look at my bike. It's got a little GPS on there, and the GPS was flashing red, and I'm like, why is my GPS flashing red? I've never seen it flash red. And it's saying contacting emergency numbers, and I'm like, what?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had forgotten that I had programmed it with my contact details of my wife and close associates. So if I was ever involved in an accident, they'd know where I would be, because I'm usually mountain biking.
Yep.
And so it was funny because the message went out to my wife via SMS, via email. It sent her the GPS coordinates where I was, which linked to a map. Great technology, Garmin does amazing stuff. And she started calling, and I'm on the phone to the police, so I couldn't really answer. And I'm messaging and saying, "I'll call you back." So she's sitting there panicking, thinking I'm dead. Well, obviously not dead because I'm messaging, but she thought I was seriously injured and something had happened, and I couldn't talk to her. And so she rang up all the neighbours and got the neighbours to come and pick me up. So the neighbours show up while I'm still sitting there, trying to figure out what to... Because I was actually quite stunned by the whole incident. So the neighbours are like, "You're okay?" And I'm thinking, what are you doing here? Because it was a couple of kilometres away from my home. And I'm like, "Oh, let me take you home." And I'm like looking at the size of their little cars. They had like a little, I think they were Corollas, Toyota Corollas, which I'm 6'3". I barely would fit in that car myself, and my bike's huge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where are you going to put my bike? Are you going to throw it over the dashboard or something like that? Like, like they do those hunting videos where the deer's across the front of the car or something. Yeah. Got home, was feeling a little bit, anxious and stuff, but I didn't feel too bad. I was actually quite surprised, and went and reported it to the police because they weren't able to come out. And so I went to the police station, reported it, and they gave me a report and everything. And the next morning I woke up and I could not move.
Yeah.
So the adrenaline and everything,
Yeah, wore off.
Yeah, it just
And
wore
then-
off. And
yeah.
the next morning I woke up and I couldn't bend my neck. My shoulders were gone. My hips were gone. My leg, where
Wow.
I'd been hit because the car hit me into my leg, was swollen, and I was just a mess. And so I spent a week just sitting there looking at the roof.
So you're telling me you couldn't do any video for photography? Is that what you're saying?
I couldn't do pretty much anything, actually. Even now, I'm a week and a half on. I'm still struggling to put words together because I'm still a little bit out of it. So just even sitting down and typing things and all that, I lose my train of thought, which is weird because I didn't actually hit my head.
I was going to say, did you actually hit your head? Or obviously you would have if you ended up on the bonnet.
I did hit my head, but because there is a dent in the helmet, but it's not a severe dent. So I think it might have just been a tight, like a little knock as such. But yeah, so there you go. That's what I've been up
Glad
to.
you're alive, mate.
Oh, I'm glad I'm alive too.
You bought a new toy.
I bought a new toy. Yes,
You bought a new
I
toy.
did.
We love our toys.
We love it. Yeah, okay, there you go. New toy. So that new toy is the new Canon 70-200 Z IS USM, which was released in October 2024. So it was actually quite hard to get your hands onto. There's always been a backlog for them. So you'd go to the shop and say, I want to buy one. They're like, oh yeah, there's a 4-month waiting period.
Really?
Yeah, there's been a huge demand and there's backlogs. And they produced it in black and white. So typically the 70-200 in the Canon range, and this is the RF, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering if we're not that old, but so it's the RF 70-200 Z series. It comes in 2 colors as opposed to typically what the Canons always came out in white. They also come out in black. The black's a little bit easier to get your hands onto because it's not as popular. The reason I didn't choose black and I waited for the white was because I've got the 24-105 Z, which looks exactly the same, and you'd be holding 2 lenses going, which one's which, trying to read the fine print on it. So I just figured, have white, it's distinctive. The other one's black, it's distinctive, it's easy enough. No small mistakes. You go to a job and suddenly you realise you brought the wrong lens and you're like,
Because typically the Canon, well, I guess Sony as well at the moment, they released 70-200 just in white, really, or cream color, right?
Yeah, I mean the first company to produce the white lenses, from what I remember, was Canon, and then Sony came along with their G Masters and copied it. So
correct. That is right.
Yeah, everyone wants to be like Canon.
What would you use that lens for, more or less, for you from your own perspective?
Well, look, I got to say the EF version, which we both own, the 2.8 we're talking about here, not the F4, by the way. Look, you can use it for a variety of things: portraits, sports, wildlife, travel, street photography. It does a little bit of everything. Traditionally, when you say, when you do, like landscapes, you probably wouldn't use this, but I have in recent years started using zoom lenses in landscapes when you're just trying to particularly get one part of a landscape as opposed to the whole entire thing.
Yep.
And it can be used for that. Probably not your first go-to lens for landscapes, but it can be used for a variety of things. So it's actually quite good. And it follows suit with the previous EF and the previous USM version that was out on the RF, because there's 2 versions of the 70-200 in the RF series.
I didn't know that.
Originally, they produced the 70-200, which was a pump sort of zoom lens. So you turn the zoom and the actual lens extended out.
Oh, right.
So, and it was really compact when you actually closed it up. It was actually quite small. And it was really, really great for traveling. This is a new version, which is a solid one piece, and it's
so internally.
Everything's internally.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So you might remember the EF 2.8 was all internal. It's the same sort of concept. It follows on from
my
that.
Sony one's all internal.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the first RF version of the 70-200 was actually the one that extended out. So as you zoomed, it extended out. This one is all internal.
What's the benefits or non-benefits of that? Do you know, more or less? Or is it just because, the compactness of the lens when it's obviously smaller, so you can move it easier, put in the bag easier and whatever else, but is there a disadvantage and advantage of that? Or not really?
There are, and we'll probably get into it a little bit later on, but for the most part, it's actually just balancing of the lens. So when you're zooming in and out with the old style 70-200 RF, what would happen is the weight change would be quite dramatic. Now, if you're on a tripod, it really makes no difference. If you're handheld, it really makes no difference. If you're on a gimbal, then it does make a difference, because the weight does change quite substantially. In saying that, though, everyone says it's more balanced, and it's this, and if you actually sit the actual lens down on the table and you zoom in and out on the new Z series, there is a change in the weight, and you can actually see it starts tinkering when you go one way and tinkers the other way, but it's not as bad as the pump action version that they had previously. So as far as the lens goes, the Z series is very sharp, extremely sharp, right through from center to edges. It's really amazing. The focus on it is probably the fastest focus I've seen on the 70-200s in any of the Canon range.
Better than Sony?
It's actually funny. Well, there is a comparison to the Sony one, which we'll get to at the very end. It's not a positive comparison, even I might add. Right. The zoom feature of it on the lens is actually really, really smooth. So it's silky smooth. It's beautiful. Not as smooth as the focus ring, but it is quite smooth.
Okay.
And the best part about it is it doesn't have very much focus breathing.
That's great.
So for those people who don't know what focus breathing is if you basically focus on something very close up and then you focus away, quite far away, when the actual lens focuses, what happens is it sort of shrinks the image or basically makes it larger. Yeah. Right. It's almost like it's slightly zooming the image. Now, some of the earlier RFs, can't remember, it was like 27 to 40 or something like that, but they had horrible breathing. Like it was almost like you were zooming up 10, 20 mil. It was actually really scary. On this one, it's minimal to the point where it doesn't jump out at you. You do it and you don't notice it. If you're really looking for it, you will notice a slight difference. But considering the range of 70 to 200, it is so minimal, it's not even worth talking about.
Yeah, I guess for video it will make a huge difference. For photography, not as much, right? Or do you feel like it will?
It is a video feature, because I mean, if you zoom in and the picture gets slightly bigger or smaller, no one's really going to have anything to compare it to. They're not going to be looking at two separate pictures and one with different focus points and go, oh yeah, look at the breathing. It's only on video. Yeah. So, you're filming one person and you basically focus in on someone else and suddenly the whole picture looks like it's zooming in and out. You don't want that. So that is predominantly a feature that would be beneficial to someone who's basically using it for video.
Yeah.
Okay. This lens is feature packed, right? By comparison to the previous RF 70 to 200, it has a lot more features. First of all, and you might be able to remember back to the EF lens, how many rings did you have on the EF lens?
I thought it was just 2, wasn't it?
It was 2.
Yeah.
How many do you think this one's got?
I don't know. 10?
It's a whole bunch of rings. It actually doesn't do anything, it just has rings on it. It's actually got 4 rings.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you've got your focus, which is, usual. You've got your zoom, which is normal, which is what's previously been on the EF versions. It's got an aperture ring.
Okay, good.
So you can adjust the aperture manually. There is a bit of a issue with that though, so we'll get into that later on. And then the 4th ring is an assignable ring. So basically you can assign anything you want to it. Now most of the new RF lenses have got the 4th ring on it. And what that means basically, it allows you to assign a different sort of feature. Like for example, what I've got assigned to my lens at the moment is an ISO change.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so if I find that I need to change the ISO, I just turn the ring, bang. It changes the ISO.
Nice.
So I've got everything in my hands, like it's just straight there. So I just have to touch something and it's working.
Yeah.
It's also got a focus on-off switch. Now, previously none of the lenses had that. So what it is just there's 2 buttons.
What do you mean focus on-off?
Switch.
Manual.
Oh, not the switch which switches the focus off completely and then you've got to fix. So you're probably thinking about little switches on-off. Yeah, no. It's actually a button on the front. So when you're focusing, you focus in on what you want, you press the button, and it locks it into that focal point.
Yeah. Sony's G Master's got the same thing, yeah.
Has it?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never actually seen that on the G Master. So
I'm pretty sure it does. I should probably pull it out and have a look.
We should probably do that.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And that's background music while we wait.
Guess who's back?
Yes, sorry, you're right. It does actually have one of those focus stop buttons.
You know what? It's actually got 2 of them.
Well, mine's got 2 too.
Wow. Never used the fucking thing. Excuse me, never used the thing.
But I actually wonder who came up with that idea first. Was it Sony or was it Canon?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
So my one is the G Master version 1, I think it is. It's fairly old now-ish. The newer one, apparently it's got faster focus. But mate, this thing's pin sharp as well. So
Well, it's actually interesting that it looks that lens that you just pulled out looks like a cross between the original 70-200 RF and the new Z series. It's like a crossover between both of them.
Yeah,
It's
right.
amazing. And is that a pump action or is it all enclosed?
nah, that's all enclosed. So
wow.
so that's fully zoomed, and then that's fully unzoomed.
Yes,
that you
that's
can't
true.
actually see.
You heard it live for the first time. I'm impressed with a. Stop it.
There you
I'm
go.
impressed with a Sony lens. There you go. So it has a focus button which allows you to stop the focus at a particular point, which, as we've just been discovered, the Sony has as well.
Ta-da.
All right. Now, the other buttons on the actual lens are very similar to the previous version and also very similar to the EF version from yesteryear. Focus range, it's got infinity to full, and it's also got 2.5 to infinity. So it's two different types of focus points. Generally speaking, the full to infinity is what you would normally use if you're shooting things. But if, for example, you're shooting something in the distance and you're trying to focus on it, and there's like a branch in front of you which the camera keeps trying to focus back onto, and you want to just basically make sure it doesn't happen, you can put the 2.5 to infinity option in, and that'll make sure that nothing in the foreground is actually causing it to focus on the foreground.
Yeah.
I never actually really picked why that was happening until recently, but there you go.
What's the closest focusing distance on that?
Minimum focus distance on this particular model is 49 centimeters.
That's pretty good.
It is pretty good, considering the previous one, the RF 70-200, the original, was 70 centimeters.
Wow, that's impressive.
So they have actually...
Good job, Canon.
Yeah. Stabilizer on off. That's exactly the same as all of them. I'm pretty sure yours got that. Stabilizer type. There's 3 different types of stabilizers. Does yours have 3? And just for clarity, when we say yours, we're talking about the Sony. We're not talking about the Canon.
No, just a single optical steady OSS. So optical steady shot only, on or off, nothing else.
That's pretty dismal. Come on.
Oh, come on, mate.
I'm sure they're going to copy Canon and there'll be 3 options in the next one. So basically there's 3 options. The first one is all directions. So that basically gives you stabilization in any direction you move the camera. Left, right, up, down. The second option is single direction, so panning on the horizon, so left to right. And the third option is the same as the second, but only works when you've actually pressed the button halfway down, which, when it automatically focuses the lens. And the benefit of that is it actually doesn't constantly stabilize and use battery power, because the stabilization does work on battery power.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it only works when you press the button down, so it saves a bit of energy.
Yep.
I always have it on 3. I just found that it worked with the way that I was filming. Don't know why, but it just has, and it happened to be the way that saves you a lot of power. So, yeah, there you go.
Mate, if it works, it works. That's good.
Yeah. So they're the main features that particular unit has. It also has a tripod collar, which is fixed, which is very much the same as the Z 24-105. So you can't take the collar off.
Oh, but you can rotate it.
You can rotate it, that's correct, but it's
So
actually a
my
permanent
one can
feature.
rotate as well,
Yeah.
but it is a permanent feature, correct?
Okay,
So you can't actually have it off like you did with the EF
that's correct, yeah.
mount. Yeah.
And actually the 70-200, the previous version, the RF, you could remove it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but
Okay.
this one, it's a permanent fixture, but as with the 24-105, you can actually take the foot off. So it's got like a little screw and a clip, bang, the foot comes off. The ring is still on there, but there's no foot. Do you have the removable foot?
Yeah, there is actually. Right.
I wonder who copied who.
Makes you wonder. I never did that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no really point of taking it off and back on, right?
Yeah,
Unless
I've never taken it off. Even when I'm doing photography, I just leave it on there.
Yeah, it's just an extra handle or an extra sort of grip that
Pretty
you
much.
can. Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I do.
I'm
And
learning something new as well here. Watch out.
You've had it for so long and you've never used yours. And it comes with an amazingly huge, ginormous carry case, which first thing I did was I threw it away.
Really?
Oh, actually, no, I've still got it. Sorry, I threw it into the corner, so I haven't thrown it away as yet. If anyone needs a carry case, give me a heads up. It's yours.
I'll put it under the house, so just in case they do want to sell it, it all comes back in the same piece.
It's actually probably the only time that you'll actually need it. All right, so there's a few differences between the previous RF 70-200 and the new Z series. I'm just going to go quickly through them.
Mhm.
The aperture, 2.8 on both of them. There's no difference there. Image stabilization, yes, on both. Weather seal, both of them have got the weather seal. Though the pump action type sort of zoom lens does draw air into it and out. So it has the unfortunate issue where it can potentially drag in dust into the lens. So that's one of the drawbacks of having a pump action sort of thing. Okay, zoom. what I found, because I had both lenses, and I've just recently sold off the old, the original version, the RF 7200, and I tested them out. I found that the actual new Z series had slightly more zoom. So the same image, same distance, the picture was more zoomed in on the new version.
Oh, okay. So you put the camera on the tripod and just change the lenses?
Yep, change the lenses, and it was actually slightly different. And that was at 70, and that was also at 200. So it wasn't just because the lens was further in or further out. So there was a difference.
So the newer one's more zoomed in, did you say?
It was.
And then the older one is less zoomed in.
Yeah. Look, probably 2 to 5 mil. Not a huge amount. It's not like it's 50 mil or something.
Yeah, you think that though, considering Canon is a professional company, they will do exactly the same thing though, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, so it was one of those things, and I mean, before I bought it, I looked at a whole bunch of reviews and stuff. No one mentioned that, so it could potentially be that one of the lenses was just a little bit out of calibration. As to which one it was, I got no idea, but there was a slight difference. Okay, so basically the rings on the lens, as we mentioned, the new one has 4, the old one only had 3. It didn't have the aperture ring. Minimum focus distance, as we discussed, the old one was 70, so the new one is 49. So there's been an improvement on the actual ability of the actual lens to focus on closer things. So that's a huge benefit. Diaphragm blades. So that's the little blades on the inside which open and close with the aperture. The old model had 9, the new one has 11.
That's good.
Yeah, so it gives you more stars and stuff.
Yeah.
The aperture on the old version went up to f32. Not that anyone would have shot that, but it was there. The new one only does up to f22.
Okay.
Focus breathing, the original RF 70 to 200 did have a little bit more focus breathing issues. The new one has actually had it quite reduced, so there's no issue there. Now, this is where things get a little bit shitty.
Oh.
Okay. The bokeh on the old 70 to 200 RF is clean. It's round. There is a slight cat eyeing, so the circles from the lights in the background aren't perfectly round. They do, as you change the distance between the actual focus, you'll find that they start becoming a little bit more cat-eyed, so they're not fully circled. That doesn't happen with the new 70 to 200. It stays perfectly straight. But what I did find was with the new Z series, there is onioning. Now, I sent you a picture of this.
Yes.
Remember, I said to you, can you see the difference? And you're like, nah.
But when I zoomed in, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bokeh, when you have a really nice bokeh, it's a round circle. The color is just solid. There's no imperfections to it.
When do you actually get bokeh? Can you explain?
Well, if you're taking a photo of something and in the background there's a light source, be it small lights, street lights, whatever.
If you're taking a portrait of someone and behind there's maybe LED lights, like as in...
You'll have these round circles where the lights are, but they're not, they're much bigger than a normal light. They sort of create these like round circles.
Yeah, so when you say shoot at 2.8, your subject will be perfectly in focus, but behind the subject, all the lights will be out of focus. So that's a bokeh, and they'll basically create that round circle.
Yeah. Now, the problem with the new Z series is if you actually zoom into those bokehs, they actually look like onion rings. Now, if you ever cut an onion in the middle, you'll see these round circles within it. So you got the outside layer, then inside, and more inside, and it gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
The new lens suffers from that. That is one of the biggest drawbacks of it. So if you're looking for bokeh, and nice bokeh, the Z series really does suck.
Yeah, okay.
It is.
I wonder if, you know what, it's probably worthwhile testing it like, not just on the lights, but maybe like, so a while back I took a photo of an owl that was in my backyard.
I remember that photo.
Yeah, and that was taken with the old Canon 7200 as well. But I got the bokeh in front of the owl and behind the owl. So it will be interesting because of the tree, leaves and everything else. They actually created a bokeh there as well. So it would have been interesting to see if that bokeh would be onion rings on the...
forward.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud.
I'm guessing it'll probably be both. Unfortunately, I think it'll just be, no matter where you have it, it's going to be there.
Have you actually watched any sort of YouTubers or whoever else review that lens and they were saying the same thing or not really?
Yeah, that was something that I was aware of before I got it.
Oh, okay.
Did not realize how bad it was. I thought, and people were like, oh, my one doesn't do that. No one, my one doesn't. And I was just like, oh, well, I'm buying this lens for a particular reason. And, bokeh, whilst I did want nice bokeh, it wasn't the main reason I was getting the lens. But doing this review, I went off and tested it. Sure as hell, it was there.
Wow.
So a little bit disappointing in that sense, but anyway.
You know what? I think maybe worthwhile. I might bring my one. Like next time you're going to do any testing, just let me know. I'll pop down and bring my one over as well. And then I wouldn't mind actually looking at my one, the Sony G Master, and see what kind of bokeh we get with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm presuming.
to be honest with you, I never tested it, so specifically for that.
I'm going to guess it's probably not going to have an issue, but I could be wrong. But there you go. Filter threads. Now on the front, if you want to get a filter for it, the old one was a 77. The new one is an 82. They say that the new one is more balanced. Well, it is more balanced, but it does have a little bit of movement left, right, and center. I mean, because there is inside, the glass is still moving around inside. It's not just on the outside, it's not moving, and the whole case is not moving, but it's still there. If you're on a gimbal, it'll probably be a lot better to have the new one compared to the old one because the balance is a little bit better. Though I don't really know anyone who'd be walking around with a 70 to 200 on a gimbal. I have actually seen people do it, but I don't know why anyone would want to, but it's there. It's not the type of thing you want to have on a gimbal, I don't think personally, but anyway. Now, the big selling point. The old RF 70 to 200 did not work with an extender, so you were limited to 70 to 200, and that was all that lens could do. Yeah. So the new one allows you to run the 1.2 or the 2 times extender, which basically magnifies the lens by 1.2 or 2. So you become 140 to 400 if you're using the 2 extender. Yeah. So that's something that a lot of people wanted, and to be quite honest, if it never really made any sense to me why they didn't introduce it previously, I think it had something to do with the optics. Diameter on the outside, the old one's 90 millimeters or 9 centimeters, and the new one's 8.9 centimeters. There's no real difference. Length closed on the old one was 14.6 centimeters. The new one is basically 19.9. So if you
it's much longer lens.
It is because it's fixed. The zoom's fixed basically. If you're traveling and you want you don't have a lot of room, the old lens would be a lot better because it's not half the size, but it's 3/4 the size, so it's easy to pack. But when you extend it out, they're pretty much identical to 19.9 fully extended, or the other one, which is just 19.9. So there you go. Colors, the original only comes in white. The new one comes in black and white. Personally, I still think most people are going for white anyway, but there you go. The one thing that everyone was saying was that the new lens weighs more than the old lens. If you look at the specs on the Canon website, they say the old lens was 1,186 grams. Okay, and they say the new one is 1,208 grams. I mean, realistically, it's like 24 grams difference. It's not a huge amount.
Bugger all.
Yeah, but being that I had both lenses, I picked them up, and even though technically the old lens was meant to be lighter, it felt way heavier.
Oh,
now I don't know why. I tried weighing it up in my hands and stuff. I didn't have a scale, unfortunately, so I couldn't actually do it, but it felt heavier in my hands. And it might have just been the design of it, because it's a lot wider than it is long. And that might have been the cause, but it did actually feel heavier than the new lens, even though the new lens is actually meant to be a little bit heavier. So that was just an interesting little thing that I picked up on.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, now the final thing is the cost. So the old lens currently is selling, recommended retail is $4,699. If you go to a shop, it's $3,936, which I've never really understood why there's such a difference in prices. But anyway, there you go.
Is it Aussie dollars?
Aussie dollars, that's right.
Yep.
And also the new one is $5,399, or if you go to a shop, it's $4,523. So there is a difference.
Not a huge difference if you think about it, though.
No, it's not. Look, there's probably $500-$600 difference between the old model and the new model, but you shouldn't base it on the price. You should base it on what the actual lens is, the purpose behind it.
Yeah, what are you going to use it for, and if it's going to suit your purpose.
Yeah. So the advantages of the old lens over the new one is that it's compact and it's better suited for travel. If you're traveling somewhere, that lens is so much easier to drop into your bag. The new lens is not. Another advantage of the old one, it's cheaper. Another advantage is the bokeh. Bokeh is really good. Yeah, I pronounced it right there.
Yeah, you did. Congratulations.
Can't say I don't learn.
I probably would prefer, like, I mean, with the Sony, right, everything is internal. I really do prefer that. I did have a couple of lenses that were extending out and in, and I think the dust and the mold and everything else will play a little bit more part in that particular lens. You know what I mean? I don't think, like extending it out and in, and travel wise, it doesn't make any difference. I reckon you're still carrying the same weight. You know?
Weight wise, yeah, but you've got to carry a much bigger bag to be able to put that lens in. Now, and the reason I say that is because I've had both lenses, and I've used the new lens doesn't fit in half my bags. So little portable bags that you throw over your shoulder, like just sling bags, it doesn't fit. So if you're using a Talopa backpack by F-Stop, you won't notice a difference. Yeah, it'll fit in there, not a problem, unless you've got the really small ICU. Okay, ICU being the internal part of the bag. Yep. But if you're basically using a small sling bag, it doesn't fit, and that is a problem. Like I've got 3 bags that I use as a sling bag, doesn't fit in any of them.
Okay.
So even though it's only a small change, it's enough to send your bags out of whack.
Yeah, personally, to me that wouldn't make any difference. I mean, if I go somewhere, I'd always bring the Talopa with me anyway. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And look, the Talopa generally is a great bag. I probably would 80% of the time be taking it with me. But if I'm doing something small where I want to be inconspicuous, having a little bag on the side of me which looks more like a nappy bag is a lot easier to camouflage than a giant backpack that has Talopa written on the side of it. Yeah, true. All right, so the benefits of the 70-200Z, the new model, is that it has an external aperture ring.
That is a good difference, yeah.
It is fantastic. There is one drawback with that. It only currently works with very, very new cameras and only works on video. It doesn't work on photos. And some of the R5 II, I believe, does have the ability to work with that for photos. I don't have the 2 model, so I've got the R5C, which is the equivalent of the R5 I, and it doesn't work for photos. Now, that might change with a firmware upgrade. Canon's constantly making firmware upgrades, and I can't believe how many they make. Like, you update the camera, and then a day later there's a new one. And the features, they've introduced these battery updates. The original battery would only record for 30 minutes, and now the batteries are lasting for an hour and a half because of the firmware upgrade. So they're constantly improving, and I have to say that's amazing. But at this point, that part of the lens doesn't really work for photography.
Yeah, right.
Okay, unless you've got the most recent camera. Z is not parabolic. But parabolic is basically where if you're focused on an item, or an image or a product or anything in the background, and you zoom in, what happens is this focus still stays perfectly the same.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so the high-end lenses, generally speaking, you can zoom in and out as much as you want, and the thing that was focused to begin with will remain focused.
Yeah.
And we're talking about manual focus here, not autofocus. In saying that, even though it is not parabolic, it has the electronic parafocal performance built into it, which is not as good as parabolic, but it's similar to. So it actually has a motor drive in there which adjusts. And to be honest with you, when I tried it out, I struggled to find any real difference. Like, it actually felt like it was parabolic. And in fact, I had to go look to make sure that it wasn't parabolic because it was working so well.
Yeah, right.
That's my version. It might be slightly different in other versions, but my one, I didn't notice it. The focus stayed exactly the same. So I was very, very happy with that. The big advantage of the 70-200Z is the fact that it's actually the same shape, style, and everything as the 24-105. So as with all the Cine lenses that Canon builds, they're all identical. So the focus ring is in exactly the same place. The zoom ring is in exactly the same place. The front of the lens, the distance between the back and the front of the lens is exactly the same. So what happens is if you're doing a video, you can interchange your lenses and you won't have to change the focus motors or the focus pullers or the matte boxes on the front. Everything will fit exactly as it's meant to. So it basically means you just disconnect your previous lens, put the new one in, bang, everything's connected again.
Yeah.
As opposed to, this is, the focus is in the wrong place. I've got to move it backwards or forwards, or the zoom's in the wrong place, or the matte box doesn't fit, or it's too long for the matte box. So they're designing them for this continuous ability to interchange, and that's really, really good. That's what they do for Cine lenses. It's not a Cine lens, it's a crossover, but it is in the same vein. One of the things that I found really, really useful was that they brought the rings back into place to the way Canon has always had them. You might remember Canon has always had their focus at the very front and their zoom at the back.
Yeah.
Is that how Sony is?
Yeah.
Okay. Nikon, on the other hand, has the zoom at the front, focus at the back. Right? And that's how it's always been for Canon, right? But with the previous 70-200, they actually had reversed them.
Dumbasses.
And it gave me the shits to no end.
Oh, 100%.
Right? You'd go to touch the zoom and it was actually the focus. And you're like, what the? You know, so that was one of those big issues for me. And they've actually rectified that.
When you get used to it,
Yeah.
it's a big difference.
Every Canon I've ever had has always had the focus at the front.
Yeah.
Suddenly you've got this lens which is completely the opposite. I felt like I was using a Nikon.
Yeah.
You know, no one wants to use a Nikon.
No potato here.
Just joking. Everyone loves Nikons. Okay, you can use the extender. Big advantage. If you want to do sports photography or if you want to do wildlife photography, it's perfect.
Yep.
You know, you suddenly get this lens that adapts from 200 to 400. That in itself is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is good. I mean, Canon had that a long time. Like, and you could get an extender for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Just like Sony.
But when they actually brought in the first 70-200 RF, they didn't have it. In fact, I actually don't think there was any lenses that actually did have the extender at that stage, to be honest, in the RF
Possibly.
range.
I don't know.
So this is a new thing. Now, another selling point for the new 70-200 Z is the Z feature. Now, Z stands for basically motorized. So basically, it doesn't come with a motor on the side, but it has the ability to have a little motor attached to the side of it, which allows you to zoom in and out like you did with the old handycams. You know, so you just press forward, zooms forward, and it's consistent.
On the body?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like it's got this little attachment, there's 2 screws, and bang, it works.
Wow.
And you can actually, depending which model you get of the attachment, you get a cable that runs to a hand grip, which then has even more control of that focus. Zoom, I should say. It zooms in nice and smooth and gradual.
Interesting.
Whilst the Z means that you can motorize them, the reality behind it is unless you go off and buy the hand grip, the motor that's on the side of it is, it's tragic.
Oh,
It jolts. Okay. It doesn't have that smooth start off. It doesn't just start slowly and move into the speed. It's abrupt. It just bang, it kicks in and it stops like bang. And it's really, really annoying. Visually, I don't think you'd be able to use it. You might be able to use the actual transition itself, but starting and stopping would actually be quite traumatizing, I think, in a video production or in a cinematic production. The only way to do it is if you use the second version of it, which allows you to control it from a hand grip, which unfortunately it gets very costly because that motor alone is like $2,500.
Wow.
And it's made of plastic.
Wow.
Right. So $2,500 for this motor on the side, and then you got to get another hand grip to be able to control that motor properly. And I think that's another $1,500, if not more.
Right.
So you're looking at another.
I'll pass. It's
yeah.
Okay.
Look, the concept's good. In time, maybe they'll produce something a little bit better and a little bit better gearing. But at the moment, it is rather tragic. You know, I personally won't buy one at the moment. Maybe when they release the third version of it and they have like a gradual increase in speed and stuff, I'll consider it then.
Interesting.
So that's the power zoom, by the way, just in case you want to know what the hell we're talking about. Also, multiple filters. You can run multiple filters basically on this lens, and it doesn't give you the shading around the sides, the vignetting. Vignetting. You know what? Before I walked in here today, I could actually pronounce it. As soon as I'm around you, I keep saying vignetting. There you go.
Yeah.
So you pronounce it right. What I did find with the other lenses that I had was if I ran a filter on the front, which was actually quite a deep filter, similar to, say, for example, a Polar Pro Armor, which is the heavy duty ones where you can hit them with a hammer and they don't break.
Yeah, right.
They're a lot deeper and they're more thick. You would actually see the vignetting on the sides. With this one here, it doesn't have that issue, which is actually nice. And that's possibly because it's an 82.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. But in saying that, the 24-105 does actually have vignetting. And
really?
That's an 82 as well.
Wow.
So, something interesting.
Yeah.
Both lenses were made in Japan.
Yay.
Which in itself is high quality.
Yay.
You know. So the big question is, why would you choose one lens over the other? Well, the reality behind it is the new lens is not a photographer's lens.
Oh, it's more for video, is it?
It's a crossover. So if you're doing photo and video or just video, yes, it is the lens for you. If you're just doing photography, there's no reason to get it. Save yourself the $500, $600
Yeah.
And keep the other one. Unless, of course, you need an extender. In which case, then fair enough, you might as well use it.
Yeah.
But that's the bottom line. Now, there's people complaining, and they're saying, "Oh, the new Z lens is a piece of crap. It's this, it's that." But the people who are complaining about it are the people who are using it for photography, right? So they're saying things like, "Oh, the aperture is declicked." Well, yeah, it's not meant to be clicked. It's designed for video. You don't want to have an aperture which goes clunk, 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 clunk.
You can, in the past, you could change that. Take it back to Canon. They would
declick it, yeah. Hey, you've been paying through the nose for a feature which they're giving you.
Yeah.
So everything that everyone's complaining about is from the perspective of a photographer.
Yeah.
Right? If you are a photographer, you will not appreciate this lens. And bokeh, it really sucks, let's be honest. Right? But if you're using it as a crossover lens, and it's not a cine lens by itself, it's a crossover lens, photography and video, then it's a great lens. And that's what it's designed for.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
We spoke about Sony comparisons, and I haven't done the test myself, and maybe we can do this at a different time, but I was told that the Z lens is actually much sharper than the 7200 Sony GM OS S2 lens.
Really?
Yeah.
Bullshit. Okay. Did that just come out?
No, but it's true. I actually saw photos, and I have to say, it did look a lot better. But, okay, in its defense...
We haven't done testing ourselves.
We haven't done it ourselves, but the Canon camera that was used to take the photos, the original photos, was the R5 II, which is the latest, greatest camera by Canon.
Yeah.
I won't say the greatest, but it is the bee's knees at the moment. The one that was for the Sony, and look, as far as I'm aware, I'm not a Sony specialist, I'm going to rely on you here. It was the Alpha 1.
Yeah.
Is that like the latest and greatest Sony?
It is. Yeah, it's one of the latest and the greatest ones, yes.
So they were saying that basically the comparison was that the sharpness wasn't there as much on the new Sony with the A1 compared to the R5 II with the new Z series lens. It's interesting, but I mean, they're two very different cameras, they're two very different lenses. You're going to have, variations. I mean,
does is the sensor similar though, or is it? So we're talking about different sensors as well. I don't even know what your one's got the sensor. Is it? Because I know a lot of camera manufacturers purchase the sensor from Sony itself as well, right? But does Canon actually make their own sensors?
I would guess so. I do not know.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I don't know.
They're probably using Sony sensors.
Yeah.
No, just joking. No way in hell. No, but
maybe worthwhile actually investigating a little bit further. But I mean, the A1 is basically a Sony flagship as well, and it's one of those cameras where it costs a lot of money. We're talking about 10,000 plus.
I have to say, before I moved into the RF mirrorless range of the Canons, I did see one of the early alphas. I think it was the A9. Is it an A9?
There is an A9 now.
Yeah, that thing had me wowed. I was just like,
I
was foaming.
It's still a top of but it's more for sport photography. The A9.
I was just impressed with how many shots per second it could take.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I switched it on at the shop and I pressed the button and it just went, and I thought I'd broken it. I said, I'm sorry. The person went, no, that's just a shutter, and I'm like, I stopped broken, and they're like, no. And I went, oh, okay. That was a very long time ago, but I have to say, I was really, really impressed with the speed on
that. I think that's actually got a global shutter on it as well, from memory. I could be wrong, but global shutter is that's what gives you that sort of speed, of the shutter itself as well.
Yeah, and also for video, it's it basically takes a single shot as opposed to scanning down, which means you don't get those weird twists in the picture and propeller braids.
Yeah.
But
okay, so is this lens like? Are we looking at who is it for, or like? So this is basically what we just mentioned now, right?
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, right? I've had both lenses. I literally just got rid of the original 70-200 RF. Gene has purchased it off me.
Yeah,
he got a good deal.
And
he's still complaining about it. But I have to say, when I handed that lens over to him, I didn't want to give it to him because the bokeh for me was like, I was like, wow, this is really nice. I'm probably not going to ever look at the bokeh and my other lens and sort of go, oh, look, there's onioning there and all that. But nonetheless, in the back of my head, it was a fantastic lens for photography. Yeah. And now that I know it's there and I've zoomed into it, I'm going to be looking for it for the rest of my life.
I mean, you are a hybrid shooter, so this new lens makes sense.
It does,
you, right?
It does.
Yeah, look, I don't know. To me, I think the internal components, it's a big benefit for me. You know what I mean? From dust and scratches and whatever else. Never really. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know.
I used the 70-200, the first version of the RF version for video production, and I have to say, for tripod work, it was really good. But if I was to be moving around and stuff like that, I really would not have enjoyed using it. I did a lot of shooting action handheld stuff using the 24-105 Z, which allowed me to be able to play with the aperture on the go. And I was able to adjust the camera on the fly, make slight adjustments to it by hand. And I absolutely love that lens. It was a no-brainer for me to move across to the Z series of this particular model, because if I enjoyed it in the 24-105, I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it in this one. There are limitations to it, bokeh being the biggest one, but if that's not a factor that really bothers you too much, and let's be honest, for video production and stuff, it's not. Constant movement, you're not going to see the onioning. If you're doing a still photo, you'll see it. So
you got to really look for it though, right? I think, like initially when I looked at it, I couldn't tell. When I zoomed in, oh yeah, you can definitely tell. But
I let a couple of other people see it as well, and they're like, oh yeah, nah, it looks exactly the same. They couldn't tell the difference, and I said zoom in, and they're like, well, it looks exactly the same. I'm like, can't you see it? And they're like, no. So unless someone pinpoints it and shows it to you, then it's not going to be obvious, But
I totally agree. I think you really got to look for it, and I think the trained eye will see it. The untrained eye, specifically for that, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah. Will your clients ring you back up and go, hey, hang on a sec.
Yeah.
The bokeh in 3 of the photos is just, there's onioning going on. I'm not happy with it. No, it's not going to happen. But, it's one of those things where as a person who's an artist, things, there's a particular style that you want.
And you know what, with both of us, we do video and we do photography, and there are certain things that we kind of look at and you kind of go, oh yeah, I can see that. But no one else can see it. You got the trained eye for that now, and you can see certain things of the video or, of whatever it is. But yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm very pedantic as well, so that probably doesn't help. Just ask my wife. She's like, stop it, it doesn't matter.
All right, well then thank you for that.
No worries. And thank you for sitting there and listening to me. And thanks for bringing the Sony out. I was actually quite impressed with it, because it looks so much like the Z series, I got to say.
Yeah, this is like the fairly old version now as well. So I think, I don't really see the benefit of faster focus. I mean, this thing's fast regardless, to upgrade it to version 2. So I think this is just fine. Yeah,
look, I mean, like I said, the only reason I changed my lens was purely because it was more video centric, and that's what I do. It still allows me to do the photos. It's got a slight difference, but it's video centric.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. I moved across to it.
Cool. All right. Thank you for whinging about it.
I did not whinge about it. I think it's a great lens. Yeah.
Mate. All right, well, thank you for listening.
Thank you, and we'll catch up with you guys in the next fortnight.
Next episode in 48. Next episode.
48, yeah.
That'll be something interesting. That'll be on my side.
Your side. Let me guess. It's going to be about drones.
Si, senor.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Toodaloo.